showing you how to bend the back of the scoop, or to bend the scoop completely, we'll start with the back. Now, these vices here, these blue vices here, have some jaw extensions on them. These pieces that stick out, we've extended the jaw slightly. This vise, that vise, that vise, and the orange vise in the other room all have jaw extensions. The one in the back there does not, so you cannot use that one. This one over here has the longest jaw extensions. So if you use that one, that's the one that makes it a little bit easier because it extends the whole length of the... Shut it off. Okay. All right, we're going to stick the project into the vise, and you will see that if you go right in the middle like this, if you're on this side, you can see that my line will not go all the way down to the bottom of the vise here, to the top of the jaw. So what I need to do is slide it out to the side until it will get down where it's even with the top of the jaw. Right there. You'll see also that for those people on this side that the vise does not come all the way out to the end of the line, which is where it I'd like it to come out to, but if it doesn't, well, we got to go with what we got. Using your hands, I want you to pull this forward towards you. Now you'll get it all the way over practically at a 90-degree angle. At this particular point, you may not have a real sharp bend on the back side of this where it meets with the vise here. So what I want you to use is a rawhide mallet, and I want you to hit right along that bend. Nowhere else, right on the bend, and you'll see it'll draw over a little bit more. Now I don't want you to completely flatten the thing out. Just get it as sharp as you can right at that particular point. Okay, and we'll take it out of the vise. We'll look at the board and we'll see that the next thing we need to do is to bend the sides on the box and pan. Brake is used for bending sheet metal. In this particular case, we're going to use it to bend the sides of our project. The box and pan brake is ran with two different levers. The black handled knob here, that lever controls the fingers. Moves the fingers up and down, allows you to put the metal in and out. The yellow handle here, that's the brake. That'll bring the metal up, begin folding the metal for you against the fingers, wherever you position your metal. We need to use the right side and we need to use the left side of the fingers. If we were to stick this directly in the middle as I bent this up, I wouldn't get very far until I put a crink in the side of the back here. So I need to be down at the far end, so when this bends up, it'll miss the finger. I also need to line up the line with the brake, wherever it breaks. And you see this move up, you'll see the line for the brake is right between the fingers and this piece that moves here. Okay, so I want to put this in, bring the fingers down, make sure the line is right on the brake. There's enough play in here that you can move that without any problem. And I'll bring the brake up. And when I feel the back touch the side, or I can see it visually touch the side, I stop bending. It will spring back slightly. A little later on in the process, we'll show you how to bring those corners in tight. And on the other side, same procedure. You need to get at the point where it's going to break. Bring the fingers down. Position the line right along that brake. Make sure the back is going to miss the fingers. And pull up until it touches. I feel it touch, or I can visually see it's at its furthest track. To clean off the bluing fluid. You'll also notice that I have a cover on top of my can of lacquer thinner. It says keep covered. And it also says on here wear goggles when using. Let's go with the first term. Why do we want to keep the can covered if we're not using it?
Because it probably will evaporate if you don't.
Very quickly. Lacquer thinner evaporates very quickly. In fact, the finish that we put on your wood project was lacquer. And you know how fast that dried, right? So Want to keep it covered, we're not using it. Wear goggles when using. Why do we want to wear goggles?
It gets in your eyes.
Right, gets in your eyes. It's really going to sting and burn. So we want to do both those things. Also want you to wash your hands immediately after you're done using this. Lacquer thinner sits on some people's hands, some people's skin reacts to it. It irritates your skin, might form a rash. So when you're done with working with this, make sure you clean it off. Try not to get the lacquer thinner on your hands as much as possible. I had to reach in there and get the brush. But I want to just put this down into the thinner. Let it soak for a while. I have a brush here. I'm going to clean the lacquer thinner, or the bluing fluid. I'm cleaning the bluing fluid off is my purpose of doing this. And the reason I want to get it off, we are going to spot weld this, and we are also going to solder this. And we have found through past experience that spot welding and soldering work much better if the surface is clean. So if we have all the bluing fluid off of here, we don't have any problem with soldering or with it spot welding. Now typically I'm going to have this bluing, or this cleaner, I'm going to have it over here on the glue table, so that's where you'll find it. Not only does it clean off the bluing fluid, but if it gets on the finish of the table, it'll eat that away too. So that's where I'm going to keep it. After a time, you may find that this doesn't seem to be doing much. The lacquer thinner, like anything else, gets weak, so it may need replacement. Okay. All right, got it all cleaned off, just cleaned off the back, around where the soldering is going to take place and where I'm going to be spot welding. So that's all that's necessary. So we want to keep that covered. Okay. Let's see my clean.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, next thing I'm going to do is bend the seams. I'm going to bend the seams for you. We're going to use the vise again. We have to use the vise. Earlier today I saw someone trying to use the anvil. Okay, I suppose you could get it, but it's not going to be as well done as trying to use the anvil like this and bending them over. You're probably not going to get as crisp and clean a bend where it should bend as you would if you used the vise. So we're going to use the vise, and I want to show you the way not to put it in here. Okay, the point, this point right here, that has to be lined up with the top jaw of the vise. If it's not, you're going to get this bending in the wrong place. You're going to have too much seam bent over. Some people will say, well, I can't get it down there. Well, you have to pull it down there. Pull the metal down until it gets to that point, gets to the top of the vise. Once it's there, lock it in and start bending it over with a rawhide mallet. Do not flatten it at this point. Just get it about 3/4 of the way over. Don't flatten it at this point because you can see my back and the side are not meant to be flattened at this point. They'll be flattened later on. Okay, the other one, same thing again applies. We pull it down. You pull the metal down till that point gets even with the top of the vise. And then with the rawhide mallet, you bend that over. About 3/4 of the way. Okay, now we're going to use a ball peen hammer. We're going to use a steel hammer now, and we're going to flatten this the rest of the way. I could flatten it here, or I could flatten it on the anvil. Somebody else will probably want to use that vise, so I'll flatten it here on the anvil. And this is what I mean by flattening. You see, they're not down tight. In order for the spot welder to work, I've got to have them down flat. So I'm going to flatten them right now. I'm also going to start to draw the corner in. So I'm going to use my rawhide mallet, and I'm going to hit this side of the bend right here along this anvil. And as I'm doing that, I'm also going to squeeze the metal together. Okay, now I took care of that side. Now I want to take care of this side right here. I'm going to straighten this out or bring that side in tighter also. So I use the anvil again, put it right over the crease of the anvil here, or the corner of the anvil, squeeze the metal together, and hit right on your bend. Squeeze your metal together as you do that. And do it right here as well. Now back over there by the box and pan brake, there'll be a sheet metal stake set up also. And the sheet metal stake will be just like another anvil. The short anvils don't work so well because your metal hits the table. They're too short. So you have to use the tall anvil. You could use the sheet metal stake in the back. You could use possibly these vise extensions. Those things might work for you to get these corners drawn in. Now remember how my corners stuck out before? Now they're all pulled in tight. Now one final time, I'll flatten these seams. When I grade your project, I'm looking to see if your back and your sides line up. If they don't, then somewhere along the line you either measured wrong or you bent in the wrong place. Okay? So that's why part of your grade is going to be based on that. Okay. Okay, what I'd like to demonstrate is the technique of soldering. We're going to use soldering to fasten the corners of our charcoal scoop. This will produce a corner that is even stronger than what we have right now with the spot welding. Goggles are a must when you're back here soldering. We'll also want the exhaust fans on to carry away any residue or smoke left from soldering. And to begin, we need to put our soldering copper into the flame and heat it up. While this is heating up, let me say that while if we're not using the soldering copper, then we'll pull it out and leave it sit on the tray on the outskirts of the furnace here. I can repair my metal by applying flux to the corners, each corner where the weld or the soldering is going to take place. And the purpose of the flux is to clean the metal and to allow the solder to flow. Now a good test to see if your soldering copper is ready is to touch it against the sal ammoniac block. If you see the white smoke, you know your soldering copper is heated up to the proper temperature. You'll also notice a silvery substance on the soldering copper. That's solder, and the reason we put that on there is to keep oxide from building up on the soldering copper. Okay, grab a piece of solder. I've already fluxed my corner. I'll place the solder down into the corner of the joint. Again, I'll take my soldering copper from the furnace, touch it to the sal ammoniac block, make sure it's clean. Then I want to touch it into the corner of the joint and let it heat up. Now after 3 or 4 seconds, we'll slowly draw the soldering iron towards the front of the joint, which in turn I'll be dragging the solder from the corner all the way up and throughout the joint. This is slow. The slower the better, so the heat can be dispersed throughout the joint. Now, while that joint is hardening, I'll put my soldering copper back into the furnace. This will take probably about 10 to 20 seconds for that solder to harden out. And as you can see there's a properly soldered joint. Okay, to complete the other side, again we'll use the flux. The flux again is to clean the joint. Take my soldering copper out of the furnace here as soon as I supply a piece of solder into the joint. Rub it against the sal ammoniac block. You see the white smoke, you know that your soldering copper is properly heated. Touch it into the corner of the joint with the point of the soldering iron. Let it rest there for 3, 4, 5 seconds, heating up the area I want to solder, and then slowly, very slowly, pull the solder along with your soldering copper. It'll follow the heat all the way out to the end of the joint. Pull it nice and slow, you get a nice smooth joint. Okay, now if I'm done and no one else is behind me to solder, I'll just place it on the front shelf of the furnace here. One of the most important safety features or things we need to think of when we're using the grinder is to make sure we're wearing goggles. You might also want to wear something protecting your clothes because there will be some sparks flying from the grinding wheel. Make sure when you're using the grinder that your metal is always resting on the tool rest. Always work on the front of the wheel. Never use the side of the wheel for grinding. Be sure you're using the front of the wheel. The work will become hot as you're using the grinder, so be cautious of that as well. The water in the can next to the grinder is used to cool your metal as it's being heated up, so occasionally you want to stick it over into the water. We also want to be careful of long hair, loose clothing, anything that could be wrapped around the shaft of the grinder as we're using it. The tool is very much like the disc sander in that we're going to be removing material. In this case we'll be removing metal instead of wood, but it's used for the same purpose of shaping and for sharpening tools. Okay, this demonstration will explain or show you how the handle is started, how we get started with the handle of our charcoal scoop. The first step that you see is to stamp your last name on the metal, and this is done at one end of the project. When we do the stamping, we'll need the letters, we'll need an anvil, we'll need a ball-peen hammer, we'll need a pair of pliers, and we will select one end or the other. Now this is accomplished either before or after you have ground your handles or filed your handles round on the end. I should say handle. So we're going to round both handle ends to a radius, about the radius of a dime. Selecting one end of the project, selecting the letters of your last name, line that up, placed on top of an anvil. Make sure that the groove in the letter is against your thumb so you have the letter the right way, and then give it one sharp blow.